Additionally, it included the directors under with whom he was employed. Among the most infamous individuals on his director, Henry Hathaway was on the list, whose name was used interchangeably with fortitude and unrelenting requints on the set. Widmark and Hathaway worked together on numerous movies, such as Garden of Evil 1954 and 1956's The Last Wagon, initiatives that highlighted Widmark but also introduced him to regular disputes with a man whose techniques that infuriated him. Hathaway's directing style was as exacting as it was dictatorial. He handled the movie set as though it were a military action, yelling commands with a strong presence that did not diffuse ad nauseam. Scenes were repeated till they fulfilled his high expectations, and performers were forced to the verge of fatigue. Hathaway thought that ferocity and control was necessary in order to capture adjunant performances. However, for many, Widmark included, this fashion was dehumanizing, grating, and needlessly harsh. He made unquestioning demands for compliance, leaving limited opportunity for original ideas. Cooperation with, who is renowned for his intense commitment to craftsmanship, frustrated by Hathaway's strict techniques, as he recognized the expertise of the I could not tolerate the absence of actors on set are treated with respect. Hathaway's use of force, yelling, scolding, and maintaining the cast under continual pressure, feeling welcome to Widmark. Later on thoughts he didn't hold back, infamously calling Hathaway a son of an actor's therapist lacking in basic decency. He wasn't just frustrated with AON production. It kept happening, source of stress in several different movies. Notwithstanding their personal hostility, the outcomes of their joint efforts were indisputable. The Last Wagon and the Garden of Evil achieved Widmark's commercial success, putting on performances that are remarkable and confirmed that he was a leading man of the time. This professional duality, victory overshadowed by personal suffering, was representative of Widmark's encounter with the. He understood that although Hathaway's techniques were severe and frequently, nevertheless, they produced dramatic effects that were challenging to dispute. It was a typical instance of conflict between temperament and artistic ability. The conclusion product displayed on the screen, but the method behind the camera, left scars. Widmark's criticisms were constant. With his more general views on Hollywood professionalism, he held high expectations for himself and others, and anticipated deference and cooperation in comeback. Hathaway's rigid strategy conflicted with this moral code. Widmark frustrated as well as committed to when he could. He asserted his own authority, but despite all of the arguing and with a smoldering grudge, Widmark stayed devoted to the art, understanding that his under pressure performances would appeal to audiences. The Widmark-Hathaway dynamic provides a wider understanding of Hollywood in the middle of the century movie. Hathaway and other directors are admired for their box office performance and technical proficiency, frequently required compliance above anything else, creating an atmosphere of severe control and occasionally anxiety. Performers, including seasoned pros, Widmark had to make his way through these opposing personalities while preserving their own creative ministry. There was a fine balance. Widmark was able to handle one with a mixture of endurance, resistance, and a readiness to express his opinions when pushed too hard. Wayne John. The 1960s production of The Alamo is regarded as among John Wayne's toughest large-scale endeavors, a sprawling epic that timed to seize the fabled Fidelity Texan defender's stance against the army of Santa Anna. However, behind the movie's grandeur and patriotic enthusiasm served as the setting for one of the most notorious feuds in Hollywood, the acrimonious dispute between John Wayne and Widmark. Richard. Their altercation wasn't a slight dispute. It was a profound gap that left a personal and professional lasting impact on the careers of both men. Wayne cast Widmark for both men. Himself in the role of the legendary Jim Bowie. A lot of actors would have happily agreed. Widmark, however, never desired the role. He approached the project in the beginning, reluctantly, concerned about the under strain of working for a set. Served as a director and a top actor. Wayne's approach to directing was renowned for he insisted on having complete authority over all facets of the production, starting with the shot framing for the performances of his actors, for the arrogant Widmark himself on the discipline of the workplace, and this proved to be stifling in terms of artistic input. He discovered that Wayne was insistent on grading by unilateral authority, and their working relationship soon turned into the conflict between the two guys was made worse by conflicting aspects on the world. Widmark had a private concerns over Wayne's conservative politics, which frequently provided information about the patriotic message of the film. As Wayne considered himself to be an advocate for traditional American ideals, Widmark found it difficult to balance these principles with his personal viewpoint. Their distinctions weren't treated to private conversations. They poured onto the stage on a regular basis. Crew members recalled furious disputes among the two, some for several hours, interfering with the shooting schedule and establishing a stressful environment on site. For those who saw it, the battle was as captivating as any sequence in the film itself. Later, Widmark explained that the whole thing as awful, simply fool. The level of effort required to function under Wayne's obstinate dominance abandoned him weary and frustrated. He discovered he is always fighting not just the requirements of the production, as well as their character of its lead and director performer. Scenes were reenacted few times to meet Wayne's high expectations, whereas Widmark's interpretations were frequently rejected. Utterly, there was a conflict of wills. The dedication of Widmark to professionalism in contrast to Wayne's autocratic myth for making films. The hostility went beyond the time allotted for filming. In subsequent interviews, Widmark claimed Wayne was never forgiven by him, and they never made amends. In contrast to many Hollywood disputes that eventually go away or our publicists helped to diffuse this conflict, remained unsolved, solidifying a unique enduring hostility between two oft most famous people in the industry. One could feel the tension not just on set, as well as in the narratives and interviews that surfaced over the course of several decades of the movie's premiere. The consequences of their conflict provide illuminating look at the demands of star-led Hollywood productions. Although Wayne's idea for the Alamo has been hailed as magnificent and nationalistic, according to Widmark draws attention to the human cost of the frustrations of creativity. Conflicts between individuals and emotional stress encountered by actors who discovered themselves under the control of an unyielding legend. Their conflict serves as evidence of the difficulties of cooperation in an environment with ego, politics and artistic authority. Carlson, Phil, the 1961 The Secret Ways, a spy drama, provided Richard Widmark with a unique degree of artistic authority, but it also served as the backdrop for one of his most severe disagreements with the director. In addition to being the movie star, Widmark additionally co-produced it, providing him with interested party in the project's direction of the arts. The script, written by Jean Hazelwood, his wife, it was originating from a quest for realism, emotional genuineness, which is very different from the flamboyant escapist tone that is prevalent to well-liked spy movies of the time. The Widmark agenda, a narrative based on moral tension, plausible stakes, and the psychological strain of secret, and he anticipated the manufacturing to convey that sensibility. Introducing Phil Carlson, a filmmaker with a radically different vision. Carlson, who's taught noir thrillers, among other credits, and action movies, aimed to introduce a more satirical James Bond fashion flair into the action. He preferred dramatic scenes, witty and chic accents that highlighted demoscent over reality. Carlson found the tale to be actions to amuse audiences with a feeling of light-hearted cinema, even at theats the price of rigorous reality. From the initial days of filming, it became evident back as Carlson and Widmark's innovative philosophies were headed for conflict. The dispute was both widely known and Widmark fiercely defending his own idea and his wife's writing fourth movie, often contested Carlson's decisions. The scenes were shot numerous times, with Widmark insisting in tone and more realistic performances mirrored the original screenplay. Meanwhile, Carlson became agitated at what he thought was meddling, claiming that Widmark was going to fire his function as co-producer and star. The tension in the set increased as between the two, the cast and crew are caught. The conflicting artistic senses of males, although neither was prepared to concede. Each of them was dedicated to the projects, putting a lot of strain on setting that put everyone to the test engaged as the movie went on. Widmark's anger grew. He thought that Carlson's strategy weakened the emotional stakes of the plot and lessened their realistic psychology that made the intriguing espionage story. By the last week of manufacturing, Widmark took taking things into his own hands. Ivan attributed director's control to guarantee his vision was reflected in the film. He remembered that Monroe had a propensity to arriving at the scene late, causing meticulously planned shoot. Once there, she frequently with her inside her closet 4 hours on end, losing herself in private preparation, or even individual contemplative. While some stars do best when left alone, Widmark discovered Monroe's before a synapses are bothersome, especially because he have to wait for her before anyone else could. Scenes may continue. For a co-star trying to keep up the momentum and rhythm, these pauses weren't only they were frustrating and inconvenient. The absence of focus, or rather its absence, was an additional source of tension. Widmark called Monroe's difficulties locking into the level of intensity her part demanded. Lines were missed or misplaced, missing facial gestures and heartbeats. In a movie such as Don't Both Hurt Knock, which required equilibrium between psychological and suspensivity, such errors might cause an whole scene. Widmark, who received training in deliberate behavior, discovered this discrepancy is especially annoying. The difference between Monroe's bright appearance on TV and her inconsistent expertise was a source of ongoing irritation. However, in spite of a severe criticism of her labor ethics, Widmark created a distinct distinction between actress Monroe and the individual Monroe. He frequently underlined that he didn't think poorly of her, referring to her as a nice girl. His difficulties that were solely caused by incompatibility on a professional level. Monroe, in his opinion, personified the paradox. In Hollywood fame, a person who is loved by millions and it seems so easy on screen. However, behind the scenes, a difficulty for co-stars who depended on accuracy and timeliness. Widmark's candor offers an uncommon, unvarnished look at the demands of working together with one of the most famous people in the history of film. This conflict draws attention to a larger reality regarding Monroe's professional life. Although her picture was one of purity, gentleness, and captivating charm, the responsibilities of her tasks, the close attention she frequently endured, her unprepared to adhere to the strict requirements of the studio system. Widmark's account encapsulates the conflict between undeveloped talent and professional discipline, demonstrating Green's viewers continued to fall in love with Monroe, and her co-stars occasionally had difficulties to deal with the reality of the workplace. Hathaway, Henry. Richard Widmark's career connection to Henry. The director Hathaway was renowned, but not at all in harmony. Renowned for his ferocity, on and off-screen frequently clashed with filmmakers who used authoritarian techniques, as well as Hathaway's damned and militaristic approach, turned into a frequent victim of Widmark's. Widmark is renowned for mentioning being the son of a characterization that encapsulated both the Hathaway's frustration and the actor's unwavering method of filmmaking. Hathaway's emphasis on self-control, repeated takes, and complete compliance made him one of his cast members the strictest directors in Hollywood. But additionally, it turned him into a lightning rod for Widmark's obstinacy and impatience. Their conflicts extended beyond vocal altercations or annoyance. At times, they intensified into full-fledged conflicts on the set. One noteworthy instance took place during the production of the 1947 movie Kiss of Death. Widmark would use that as one of his performances that defined a career, however requiring focused, accurate performance from his performers. Often criticized the cast in his characteristic loud authority, Widmark, who came up to his craft with expertise, but in addition to anticipated some level of respect in exchange, reached a breaking point. Sensation irritated and offended by Hathaway's angry language, Widmark left the set, briefly departing from the performance amid chaos, but the standoff was short-lived after his sudden departure. Widmark threw, and they parted ways. For a break for lunch, a tense quiet pause that neither man appeared to about to shatter. The sets report simply that the lunch was designated by pain shared by both males, brewing in silent animosity. However, even though it was difficult, the break turned out to be a pivotal moment. Following the after a quiet supper, Widmark went back to the established, indicating a grudging pact. Although the stress didn't completely go away, this quick reconciliation made it possible for filming to proceed and highlighted the intricate relationship between the actor and director, a combination of conflict, begrudging, and compromise. In prosmans, Widmark's thoughts of Hathaway show that their relationship is dualistic. On the one hand, he was obviously annoyed by Hathaway's inflexible, frequently harsh style of direction. The ongoing pressure, booming orders, and disrespect forth viewpoints of the actors put Widmark's patience over and over. However, the readiness of Widmark to go back to following the lunch standoff reveals his practical attitude. He acknowledged that in spite of personnel complaints, the requirements of the trade and the significance of finishing the assignment come first. Their partnerships, even though it was tense, in the end produced impressive performances and films that are commercially successful, emphasizing the delicate balance between conflict between creativity and professionalism. This dispute resolution and conflict pattern displays a recurrent motif in his refusal to repress his viewpoints even while collaborating with honorable directors, along with education to the work at the Hathaway's strategy. While furious with Widmark has to face up to intense examination and forced him to provide some of his best-known performances. However, the conflict between the two men, frequently uneasy, turned into a catalyst for artistic ability, proving that high-pressure-filled settings, but personality ending could result in cinema. Widmark's candid testimonies of these encounters provide uncommon look beyond the glossy exterior of vintage Hollywood. They make the human cost of producing timeless movies, the periods of annoyance, pride, and quiet bargaining that influenced performances and created professions. Looking back at his conflicts with Hathaway, it turns into evident that their partnership was not characterized by basic hostility. Instead, it was a complicated interaction between tension, ability, and eventually professionalism. Widmark's brief absence during Kiss of Death is a miniature version of this dynamic, which captures the drive and pull that defined his conversations with directors who insisted on both obedience as well as excellence. Andrei Tarkovsky. Anatoly Richard Widmark is renowned as a fiery disposition. In addition to his magnetic, rarely held back when speaking on TV when talking about people in the movie business. His directness is frequently shockingly honest. Went beyond Hollywood and co-stars. Directors to incorporate foreign directors of high notoriety. Among the most notable instances came a movie during a public interview occasion where Widmark was questioned about Andrei Tarkovsky. The renowned Russian filmmaker was praised for his lyrical film that is meditative. Widmark's answer was as succinct as it was. Tarkovsky is a fake. It's foul. This dismissal startled a lot of people down, particularly in light of Tarkovsky's reputation throughout the world cinematic society. Tarkovsky was extensively adored for movies like Andrei Rublev's Stalker and Solaris, which had gained them a loyal fan base for their philosophical profundity, poetic imagery, and meticulously written stories. However, Widmark's criticism brought to light his own unique perspective, based on a simple and focused on doing action sensibility that was very different from Tarevsky's meditative sluggish style. Regarding Widmark, whose professional success was based on intensity, accuracy, and a practical approach to narrative, the abstraction of Tarevsky, and extended contemplation of metaphysical even, the themes appeared pretentious, dishonest. Widmark single quotes his contempt extended beyond bait over art. It was intimate, and moral in character. Referring to Tarevsky as a fake, he said that underneath the artistic and intellectual abilities of the director repute contained a component of dishonesty, and a sense of superiority that did not conform to Widmark's idea of genuine artistic ability. In his follow-up, Hesmels carried a burden of emotion that left no space for interpretation.